The transmission wasn't meant for Earth. That much became clear as Senior Communications Officer Kim Tahoe stared at his screen in the dim light of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station. The message had appeared suddenly, breaking through the normal cosmic background noise that filled his headphones during the quiet night shift. "This can't be right," he muttered, running the signal through the filters again. The station, buried deep within the lunar regolith, was humanity's farthest listening post in 2081. Mankind had established colonies on Mars and mining operations on several moons, but had yet to venture beyond the solar system. Tahoe's fingers moved quickly across his console as he isolated the signal. It wasn't random noise or stellar interference. The pattern was too regular, too structured. It was a message, encrypted, but definitely artificial. Protocol demanded he alert his superior immediately for anything unusual, but curiosity got the better of him. He routed the signal through the station's quantum computer, applying basic decryption algorithms. To his shock, patterns began to emerge. By the time Station Director Park Ju arrived, bleary-eyed from being woken at 3 a.m., Tahoe had already assembled preliminary findings. "It's definitely a transmission," Tahoe explained, pointing to the scrolling data. "But it wasn't meant for us. The header, at least what we can decode, suggests it was addressed to something called Nari Outpost Sentinel." Director Juwoo's expression shifted from annoyance to intense focus. "And the origin? That's what's impossible," Tahoe said. "If our calculations are correct, it came from the Epsilon Eridani system, 10 light-years away." "Yes, Director." Within hours, the station was buzzing with activity. Earth's best cryptographers were connected virtually, working to break the alien code. The United Earth Council, formed after the water wars of the 2060s, assembled in emergency session. 3 days later, they had their answer. "We believe," explained Chief Cryptographer Lee Hanna to the assembled world leaders, "that the transmission was sent by mistake. It appears to be a regular diplomatic bulletin from something called the Galactic Concordate, a coalition of spacefaring species, to one of their observation posts. The message was apparently misdirected by a junior diplomatic officer of an aquatic species called the Bellans." President Cho Min-seo leaned forward. "And the contents?" Hanna's expression darkened. "That's why we called this emergency session. The message contains detailed assessments of Earth. They've been watching us, Madam President, for decades." The room fell silent. "The Concordat classifies us as a primitive pre-FTL species with concerning aggressive tendencies. They've established what they call a quarantine boundary around our solar system to prevent contact until we've matured sufficiently." Defense Minister Kang Joon-ho slammed his fist on the table. "They've been containing us, like animals in a zoo." "There's more," Hanna continued. "The message includes discussion of recent human advancements in fusion technology and quantum computing. They debate whether these developments warrant intervention before we achieve independent interstellar capability." The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity was not alone, and their cosmic neighbors weren't necessarily friendly. "We need to know more," President Min-seo finally said. "I want every resource directed toward decoding the embedded data in this transmission. If they've been watching us, perhaps we can learn about them." Over the following weeks, scientific teams worked around the clock. The transmission contained far more than just text. It held data packets, technical specifications, star charts, and biological information about member species of the Concordat. Dr. Choi Jin-woo, Earth's leading physicist, made the first breakthrough. "They use a form of faster-than-light travel," he reported excitedly to the Science Council. "And while the principles are advanced, they're not incomprehensible. The transmission contains enough reference data that we might, with focused effort, reverse engineer the basics." Similar revelations came from other departments. The Concordat's energy systems, materials science, and propulsion technology were all centuries ahead of Earth's, but not impossibly so. Each discovery sparked new research initiatives as humanity scrambled to catch up. 2 months after the transmission, Humanity's first alien visitors arrived. The ship appeared suddenly in high Earth orbit, a sleek vessel that reflected sunlight like burnished bronze. No engines were visible, and it had bypassed all defense systems without triggering alarms. "We come in peace," came the transmission in perfect English. "We are representatives of the Galactic Concordat. We request immediate dialogue with Earth's leadership." The ship's commander identified himself as Ambassador Ryukunjin of the Orun species. The United Earth Council debated fiercely about how to respond. "They know we intercepted their transmission," Defense Minister Kang argued. "They're here for damage control." "Then let's hear what they have to say," President Mincio decided. But carefully. The meeting was arranged at the Lunar Diplomatic Center, a neutral location that wouldn't expose Earth directly to unknown alien biology. The human delegation arrived first, tense and prepared. When Ambassador Hyunjin entered with 2 assistants, even the seasoned diplomats couldn't hide their shock. The aliens were humanoid, but clearly not human. Tall and slender with iridescent skin that shifted colors slightly as they moved, they had wide-set eyes that reflected light like a cat's. Ambassador Hyunjin moved with fluid grace as he bowed respectfully. "We must apologize for the unfortunate circumstances of our introduction," he began in that same perfect English. "A regrettable error has advanced this meeting before its appropriate time. We've been neighbors for quite some time without an introduction." President Mincio replied coolly, "Perhaps it's overdue." The ambassador's skin rippled briefly in what might have been discomfort. "The Concordat has studied Earth for many of your centuries. It is our policy to observe developing worlds without interference until they achieve certain technological milestones." "You mean until we're useful to you?" Defense Minister Kang said bluntly. "Until mutual interaction becomes beneficial," Hyunjin corrected smoothly. "Many young species react, unpredictably, to the knowledge that they are not alone in the cosmos. We have learned caution through unfortunate experiences." The meeting continued for hours. The ambassador explained the Concordat's structure. Thousands of spacefaring species united under common laws, trading resources and knowledge across hundreds of star systems. Earth, he explained, could eventually join this community, but would require guidance for perhaps a century or 2. "We can offer technological assistance, medical advancements, cultural exchange, at an appropriate pace," Hyunjin said. "In return, we ask only for patience and cooperation." The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. As the delegation returned to Earth, President Mincio gathered her closest advisors. "They think we're children," she said quietly. "Did you notice how he never mentioned the quarantine, or their discussions about intervention? They don't know how much we decoded," Dr. Jinwoo realized. "Exactly," the president replied. "And they don't know what we've learned from it already." She turned to her defense minister. "How quickly can we implement Project Defiance?" Minister Kang smiled grimly. "With the new insights from their transmission, months, not years. Then we proceed carefully. We'll play the role they expect. Grateful, somewhat intimidated primitives. Meanwhile, we prepare." She looked at the lunar surface through the shuttle window, then beyond to the stars. "They've made a grave miscalculation. They see our youth as weakness." "What should we do about their offer of guidance?" asked Director Juwoo. "Accept it," the president said firmly. "Let them teach us what they're willing to share, while we learn everything they don't intend to show us." She looked around at the determined faces of her team. Humanity will have its place among the stars. As equals, not pets. They've awakened something they didn't anticipate. "And what's that?" Dr. Jinwoo asked. "Our pride," she answered simply, "and our capacity to surprise." Retri. Ambassador Ryu Hyunjin paced the length of his quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel Starlight Envoy. 6 Earth months had passed since first contact, and the situation was not progressing as the Concordat's extensive protocols had predicted. "The humans should be in Phase 3 of adaptive shock by now," he muttered to his assistant, Officer Minjai. They should be seeking technological gifts and spiritual guidance. Instead, they're asking pointed questions about propulsion systems and quantum communications. Jaya reviewed the latest reports from their observation teams. Perhaps their psychological profile needs updating. They've shown remarkable resilience to the revelation. Resilience is not the issue, Hyunjin replied, his skin shifting to a troubled blue hue. Their focus concerns me. They're not behaving like a species in awe of cosmic revelation. The Concordat had carefully managed first contact scenarios for over 3,000 years. The pattern was well established. A developing species learns they are not alone, experiences collective existential crisis, then seeks reassurance and protection from their more advanced cosmic neighbors. This typically resulted in a beneficial arrangement. The younger species received carefully measured technological assistance, while the Concordat gained resource access and a grateful new member. But humans were deviating from the script. The morning's negotiation session did nothing to ease Hyunjin's concerns. Earth's diplomatic team, led by Foreign Secretary Kim Yuri, had politely but firmly rejected the Concordat's offer of developmental oversight. "We appreciate your generous offer," Secretary Yuri had said with a pleasant smile that didn't reach her eyes, "but Earth prefers direct membership, with technology exchange to begin immediately." The audacity had left Hyunjin momentarily speechless. No species was granted full membership without centuries of preparation. The humans were barely space-capable, having only established basic colonies on their red neighbor planet. "Perhaps I haven't made the opportunity clear," Hyunjin had replied carefully. "The Concordat is offering Earth protection and guidance, a rare privilege. Full membership requires certain technological and social developments that humans have not yet achieved." Secretary Yuri had simply nodded. "Then perhaps your delegation would benefit from seeing our recent progress. We've prepared a demonstration for tomorrow." Now, preparing for this demonstration, Hyunjin felt uneasy. Something wasn't right. The humans were too confident, too composed. They should be desperate for Concordat approval, not acting like they had leverage in negotiations. The demonstration site was a facility built into the lunar surface, far from the original landing sites that humans still preserved as historical monuments. The Earth delegation welcomed the Concordat representatives with formal courtesy as they entered a viewing chamber with a large observation window overlooking a massive underground hangar. "What you're about to see," President Cho Min-seo explained, "is the first prototype of our independent interstellar program." Below them sat a vessel unlike any Hyunjin had seen in human archives, sleek and distinctly non-human in design. It bore little resemblance to the bulky, functional craft humans had previously built. "This is the EA's Defiance," said Defense Minister Kang Juno with unconcealed pride. "Our first faster-than-light capable ship." Hyunjin felt his skin flush with alarm colors before he could control his reaction. "That's not possible," he stated flatly. "Your species is decades away from developing such technology." Dr. Choi Jinwoo, Earth's chief scientist, stepped forward. "We've made some recent breakthroughs," he said mildly. "Would you like to see the engine test?" Before Hyunjin could respond, the chamber filled with the hum of enormous energy being channeled. The ship below them glowed faintly along artful lines that Hyunjin recognized with growing horror as a rudimentary but functional version of a Concordat spatial displacement drive. "How did you?" he began, but stopped himself. The humans were watching him closely, measuring his reaction. "The test will commence in 30 seconds, announced an automated voice. Minister Kang turned to Hyunjin. "We should mention that our sensors detected increased Concordat fleet activity at the edge of our solar system 3 weeks ago. Would you care to comment on that, Ambassador?" Hyunjin's diplomatic training failed him. The fleet was supposed to be invisible to human detection. It was only a precaution, a standard containment force to ensure the developing species didn't become problematic. "It's merely a routine patrol," he managed. 20 seconds to drive activation," said the automated voice. President Min-seo stepped closer to Hyunjin. "Let's be honest with each other, Ambassador. You never expected us to intercept your transmission. You never expected us to understand it. And you certainly never expected us to learn from it. 10 seconds to drive activation. Hyunjin gathered his composure. President Mincio, I must strongly advise against activating an untested drive based on technology you cannot possibly fully understand. The risks. 5 seconds. Air unacceptable. Please, the Concordat can help you develop safely over time. Drive active. Below them, the ship pulsed with energy. Space itself seemed to bend slightly around it, a visual distortion that no pre-FTL species should be capable of generating. As you can see, Dr. Jinwoo continued conversationally, we've solved the field stability issues that plagued our earlier prototypes. This vessel can now achieve approximately 60% of the speed capability of your standard cruisers. Hyunjin's assistant, Jaya, was frantically taking notes, her skin flickering between professional neutrality and alarmed purple. Your species has made remarkable progress, she said carefully. We're quick learners, Secretary Yuri replied with that same pleasant, dangerous smile. The test concluded, and the drive powered down. Hyunjin needed to report this development immediately. The Concordat Council would need to reevaluate their entire approach. Perhaps, he suggested, we should discuss a more accelerated integration program for Earth. President Mincio nodded. We're open to discussion. But first, I think we should address the Concordat fleet positioning. We consider it an unfriendly act to station warships near a potential ally. They're merely observational vessels. Hyunjin lied smoothly. Minister Kang handed him a data tablet. Then you won't mind explaining these weapon signatures we've detected. Our analysis suggests they match Concordat planetary pacification systems. Hyunjin stared at the detailed scans. How had they obtained this level of sensor technology? The classified specifications of Concordat defense systems were displayed with disturbing accuracy. There seems to be some misunderstanding, he began, but President Mincio cut him off. No misunderstanding, Ambassador. Your Concordat made assumptions about humanity. You judged us as primitive, predictable, and easily managed. That was your mistake. She gestured to a wall that transformed into a display showing Earth's solar system. Small lights blinked throughout, marking positions of previously undetected human vessels and defensive installations. We have not been idle these past months, she continued. While you've been evaluating us for potential membership, we've been preparing for all possibilities, including the need to defend ourselves. Hyunjin fought to maintain diplomatic composure. The Concordat has no hostile intentions toward Earth. Then prove it, Minister Kang challenged. Withdraw your fleet. Later that evening, Hyunjin sent an encrypted emergency message to the Concordat Council. The humans were advancing far too quickly. Their adaptation and learning speed was unprecedented. Most concerning was their apparent ability to reverse engineer Concordat technology from minimal information. His final recommendation was clear. Either integrate Earth immediately as a provisional member with full technology exchange, or commit to immediate containment before the humans developed further. The middle path, the careful guidance approach, was no longer viable. The Council's response came swiftly. The fleet would remain in position. Ambassador Hyunjin was to stall negotiations while reinforcements arrived. What the Council didn't know, what Hyunjin himself didn't suspect, was that 3 small, undetectable Earth vessels were already leaving the solar system, carrying human observers to key Concordat worlds. The first human interstellar intelligence mission was underway while diplomats talked in circles. The humans had already moved to the next phase of their plan, and the Concordat was still trying to understand what had gone wrong with the first. Retri Jiar. Cho Jinwoo hadn't slept properly in weeks. His laboratory deep beneath Seoul's rebuilt center buzzed with activity even at 3 in the morning. Teams of scientists worked in shifts around the clock, analyzing the wealth of information they'd extracted from the intercepted Concordat transmission. More coffee, Doctor? Asked his assistant, handing him a steaming cup. Thanks, Yoonha, he said, taking it gratefully. Any updates from the propulsion team? They've successfully replicated the field stabilization matrix. It's crude compared to the Concordat version, but it works. Jinwoo nodded, satisfaction momentarily breaking through his exhaustion. 6 months ago, faster-than-light travel had been theoretical. Now, thanks to clues hidden in the alien data packet, humans were building functional FTL drives. Similar breakthroughs were happening in labs across the planet. Old national rivalries had been set aside in the face of a potential cosmic threat. The revelation of the Galactic Concordat had achieved what centuries of diplomacy couldn't: true global unity. The Americans have cracked the communication encryption, Yuna continued, reviewing her tablet. And the Chinese-Indian coalition has a prototype shield generator running at 40% efficiency. Jinwoo pulled up the project timeline on his screen. We're working faster than I thought possible. Fear is a powerful motivator, Yuna said quietly. Jinwoo couldn't disagree. The Earth Security Council had been clear. Assume hostile intent from the Concordat until proven otherwise. Their containment fleet still lurked at the edge of the solar system despite diplomatic protests. Across the planet, military forces were reorganizing into a unified Earth defense force. Weapon systems were being retrofitted with new technologies. Defensive satellites were quietly being placed in strategic positions. Humanity was preparing for war while smiling through peace talks. 3 days later, in a reinforced bunker beneath the Himalayas, Director Nam Sunwoo briefed the Earth Security Council on the intelligence operations now underway. The infiltration team has successfully reached Concordat Hub Station Epsilon, he reported. Captain Han Mayang reports that their genetic disguises are holding under scrutiny. Defense Minister Kang leaned forward. They've infiltrated a Concordat station already. How? The transmission contained detailed biological data on several Concordat species, Sunwoo explained. Our medical team used it to create temporary genetic modifications and prosthetics. Our operatives appear to be Tellurians, a species physiologically similar enough to humans that the disguises work. And no one questions their presence, President Mincio asked. The Concordat has thousands of member species, Madam President. No individual can recognize them all. Our team presents themselves as merchants from an outer colony. Their ship's identification was cloned from data in the transmission. The council members exchanged impressed glances. Humanity was adapting far faster than anyone had anticipated, including the Concordat. What have they learned? Asked Secretary Yuri. Sunwoo's expression grew serious. The Concordat is far from the benevolent alliance they present themselves as. Older, established species hold power, while newer members serve essentially as resource providers and labor sources. And species deemed problematic are either contained or, he paused, eliminated. A heavy silence fell over the room. They're discussing Earth specifically, Sunwoo continued. Our team intercepted communications indicating concern about our rapid technological adaptation. Some Concordat factions are advocating for immediate intervention before we advance further. President Mincio's hands tightened on the table edge. Then we need to accelerate our preparations. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, the first true human warship was nearing completion. The EA's Defiance wasn't the prototype shown to Ambassador Kunjin. That had been a convincing shell with just enough working technology to appear functional. The real Defiance was something else entirely. Captain Kim Chun-ho stood in the observation deck, watching as construction drones swarmed around the massive vessel. Unlike traditional human designs, this ship incorporated everything they'd learned from the Concordat data. Its sleek hull housed weapon systems far beyond what Earth had possessed just months ago. Beautiful, isn't she? Said Chief Engineer Park Do-yeon, joining him at the viewport. How close are we to launch? Chun-ho asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. The drive cores are integrating better than expected. Chun-ho nodded. The crew. Training on the simulators. They're adapting well to the new systems. They need to adapt faster, Chun-ho said grimly. Intelligence reports suggest we may have less time than we thought. Across the solar system, Similar scenes played out as humanity prepared. Mars' colony had been transformed into a massive manufacturing center, churning out components for the new defense fleet. The lunar bases now housed advanced research facilities. Earth's orbital platforms had been quietly weaponized. Most citizens knew only that diplomatic relations were ongoing with the newly discovered galactic community. The full threat was kept from the public to prevent panic, but resources were being mobilized at an unprecedented rate. At the Geneva Earth Unity Center, Ambassador Hyunjin was growing increasingly frustrated with the diplomatic stalling tactics. He'd been requesting tours of Earth's developing space capabilities for weeks, only to be politely refused or shown carefully selected facilities. Jin Woo couldn't disagree. The Earth Security Council had been clear. Assume hostile intent from the Concordat until proven otherwise. Their containment fleet still lurked at the edge of the solar system despite diplomatic protests. Across the planet, military forces were reorganizing into a unified Earth defense force. Weapon systems were being retrofitted with new technologies. Defensive satellites were quietly being placed in strategic positions. Humanity was preparing for war while smiling through peace talks. 3 days later, in a reinforced bunker beneath the Himalayas, Director Nam Sunwoo briefed the Earth Security Council on the intelligence operations now underway. The infiltration team has successfully reached Concordat Hub Station Epsilon, he reported. Captain Han Mayong reports that their genetic disguises are holding under scrutiny. Defense Minister Kang leaned forward. They've infiltrated a Concordat station already. How? The transmission contained detailed biological data on several Concordat species, Sunwoo explained. Our medical team used it to create temporary genetic modifications and prosthetics. Our operatives appear to be Tellurians, a species physiologically similar enough to humans that the disguises work. And no one questions their presence, President Mincio asked. The Concordat has thousands of member species, Madam President. No individual can recognize them all. Our team presents themselves as merchants from an outer colony. Their ship's identification was cloned from data in the transmission. The council members exchanged impressed glances. Humanity was adapting far faster than anyone had anticipated, including the Concordat. What have they learned? Asked Secretary Yuri. Sunwoo's expression grew serious. The Concordat is far from the benevolent alliance they present themselves as. Older, established species hold power, while newer members serve essentially as resource providers and labor sources. And species deemed problematic are either contained or, he paused, eliminated. A heavy silence fell over the room. They're discussing Earth specifically, Sunwoo continued. Our team intercepted communications indicating concern about our rapid technological adaptation. Some Concordat factions are advocating for immediate intervention before we advance further. President Mincio's hands tightened on the table edge. Then we need to accelerate our preparations. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, the first true human warship was nearing completion. The EA's Defiance wasn't the prototype shown to Ambassador Hyunjin. That had been a convincing shell with just enough working technology to appear functional. The real Defiance was something else entirely. Captain Kim Chun-ho stood in the observation deck, watching as construction drones swarmed around the massive vessel. Unlike traditional human designs, this ship incorporated everything they'd learned from the Concordat data. Its sleek hull housed weapon systems far beyond what Earth had possessed just months ago. Beautiful, isn't she? Said Chief Engineer Park Do-yeon, joining him at the viewport. How close are we to launch? Chun-ho asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. The drive cores are integrating better than expected. Chun-ho nodded. The crew? Training on the simulators. They're adapting well to the new systems. They need to adapt faster, Chun-ho said grimly. Intelligence reports suggest we may have less time than we thought. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out as humanity prepared. Mars' colony had been transformed into a massive manufacturing center, churning out components for the new defense fleet. The lunar bases now housed advanced research facilities. Earth's orbital platforms had been quietly weaponized. Most citizens knew only that diplomatic relations were ongoing with the newly discovered galactic community. The full threat was kept from the public to prevent panic, but resources were being mobilized at an unprecedented rate. At the Geneva Earth Unity Center, Ambassador Hyunjin was growing increasingly frustrated with the diplomatic stalling tactics. He'd been requesting tours of Earth's developing space capabilities for weeks, only to be politely refused or shown carefully selected facilities. The Concordat Council is becoming impatient, he informed Secretary Yuri during their weekly meeting. They expect greater transparency from potential associates. We value transparency too, Ambassador, Yuri replied calmly. Perhaps when your fleet withdraws from our system, we can discuss expanded access. The fleet's presence is standard procedure, Hyunjin insisted. A protective measure for developing worlds. We don't need protection, Yuri responded, her smile never wavering, particularly from those we're meant to trust. The conversation had reached the same impasse it always did. What Hyunjin didn't know was that while they spoke, 5 more human intelligence vessels were slipping out of the solar system using cloaking technology adapted from the Concordat's own designs. Far from Earth, on the edge of Concordat space, Captain Han Mayung's infiltration team had discovered something crucial. Disguised as maintenance workers on Hub Station Epsilon, they gained access to shipping manifests and fleet movements. They're assembling a much larger force, Mayung reported through heavily encrypted channels. Not just observation vessels, warships, at least 30 capital ships with support craft. Director Sunwoo's face on the secure communication screen showed deep concern. Timeline: 3 weeks, maybe 4 before they're fully assembled. The station chatter suggests they're calling it a stabilization force. We both know what that means, Sunwoo said grimly. Continue gathering intelligence. We need to know their capabilities and weaknesses. There's something else, Director, Mayung added. Not all Concordat species support this approach. We've identified several factions who oppose the containment policy. Some have even expressed admiration for humanity's rapid advancement. Potential allies. Possibly. The Nari in particular, the species that original message was meant for, seem sympathetic. They were once subjected to similar treatment. Make careful contact if possible, Sunwoo instructed. We need all the help we can get. Back on Earth, the final pieces of humanity's response were coming together. In a secret facility beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Jinwoo supervised the installation of the quantum core for Earth's new defense network. This technology didn't even exist 6 months ago, marveled President Minseo, who had come to witness the activation. Amazing what humans can accomplish when properly motivated, Jinwoo replied as he initiated the startup sequence. The Concordat's greatest mistake wasn't sending that transmission to Earth. It was underestimating what we'd do with the information. The massive system hummed to life, extending its awareness throughout the solar system. For the first time, humanity could detect and track every Concordat vessel, even those using stealth technology. How long until the fleet is ready? The President asked. 2 weeks until the Defiance and her first squadron are operational, replied Defense Minister Kang. The rest will follow quickly after. It may not be enough against their numbers, Jinwoo cautioned. We don't need to match their numbers, Minister Kang said confidently. We just need to surprise them enough to make them reconsider. Humans have a long history of winning despite being outmatched. President Minseo looked at the holographic display, showing the positions of the Concordat vessels lurking at the system's edge. They think they're watching us, she said quietly. They don't realize we're watching them too. That will be their downfall. Retriegir. Choi Jinwoo hadn't slept properly in weeks. His laboratory deep beneath Seoul's rebuilt center buzzed with activity even at 3 in the morning. Teams of scientists worked in shifts around the clock, analyzing the wealth of information they'd extracted from the intercepted Concordat transmission. More coffee, Doctor? Asked his assistant, handing him a steaming cup. Thanks, Yunha, he said, taking it gratefully. Any updates from the propulsion team? They've successfully replicated the field stabilization matrix. It's crude compared to the Concordat version, but it works. Jinwoo nodded, satisfaction momentarily breaking through his exhaustion. 6 months ago, faster-than-light travel had been theoretical. Now, thanks to clues hidden in the alien data packet, humans were building functional FTL drives.